Hello, my name is Aaliyah. Today we're going to be talking with the performance group. For if anyone who isn't a part of our class ever ends up watching this, would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Brandy. I am not actually acting. I just kind of do some of the background stuff of the performance. Anybody else?
Hello, I'm Avery. That's all.
It's beautiful, Avery.
Hi, I'm Sam.
Hi, I'm Lauren.
Hi, I'm Paige.
Hi, thank you.
Because we're doing Othello, and since you guys are all acting, did you guys want to talk about the parts you guys are playing too when you introduce yourself? I don't have to do it, so I'm volunteering you.
Okay, we can talk about that. I thought, okay, that works. I'm playing Desdemona. I'll go more into depth in that when the correct answer comes. Is kind of what I was waiting for, or the correct question comes.
Yeah.
What about the rest of y'all?
I'm playing Amelia.
Well, I'm going to be playing a female Iago.
And I am female Cassio.
Great, thank you. I guess the first question, where to start with this conversation, would just be give us a little bit of information about what your project is. You're labeled as the performance group, but that's kind of vague. What are you doing for this project?
So as the performance group, we decided that we wanted to focus on Othello, but to look at Othello as a gender bent production rather than playing the roles that they're traditionally meant to be played. And I think that allows us to make a comment on the play's relevance, not only to the Black Lives Matter movement and all of the social change that's occurring in this moment, but also allows us to comment on the progression of women or the lack thereof in today's world. And the combination of the two kind of allows us to make a double comment, both with women of color, but also just women in general.
Thank you. So you guys were talking about doing a gender bent performance to try and comment on something different. How are you changing the production in any other ways? Is it mostly just role swapping? Because I know you guys are doing an abridged script. Was there any choices that you made when picking what you were going to perform to sort of highlight the gender roles?
For that, well, it was abridging the script. When we went through doing that, we all actually pitched into, like, each of us grabbed a different act in Othello, and we pulled information of what we thought would be the most relevant that we definitely wanted in the abridged version, and we combined all of those, and then we went through and kind of put together what would make the most sense dialogue wise. But mostly, like, when I see the gender bent portion of it and seeing like what each of the roles looks like in reverse, I mean, you see a woman in the military, you see actually 3 women in the military, which you wouldn't normally, like, there's not a lot of media focus, I guess, on that as far as when you're looking at gender. So we have 3 really powerful women kind of being the main characters of the story in Othello. We also have Rebecca Mims playing Othello, and she's not here today, but and then we have whereas normally it's like there's Othello, who is this really powerful man, kind of strangling or smothering Desdemona as a female. I feel like we see a lot of that style of, I don't know, like abuse to an extent. That's really more common to see, but I think that it also kind of puts a narrative on, like, there's, like, men don't have to be like these really big, domineering, like, forceful creatures to be men. And I think that there's also a kind of a commentary on that as well with the play.
That's really interesting. For me, at least, as someone outside of this project, when I hear you talking about that, it kind of makes me think about, in commenting on gender roles, how close that ties in with power. And then a little bit, when you're talking, it made me think a little bit about abuse and abusive relationships and how typically gender plays with power in a very specific way. Are you seeing a lot of that being flipped in this new production you guys want to put on? Or is it more enhancing what's already there?
I think it's kind of flipping it only because, like Brandy said, the men are so domineering and powerful in the original production that all that power that you see both in Othello and Iago is totally, in the hands of a woman as opposed to, a man. And we're seeing these women control the lives of, all of the men around them, as opposed to, the opposite, which is typically true in the production.
I think this is a really fascinating take on it. Were you gonna say something, Brandy?
But just specifically when you're looking at lines, like one of the things that we pulled is when Desdemona and Othello were having that moment of like the really the climax of the play. There's a part where Desdemona says, and yet I fear you, like I'm still afraid of you. And I think that it's really important to see that that women can be fearful, or women can be like scary. They're, and I think that there's kind of an honesty that comes with that isn't addressed as much. And I think that the play, when we abridged it and we swapped the pronouns and we did all that, I think it does a really good job of pointing out that it that pulls the fear that women can instigate and men can feel, and it's okay.
When you guys first started this project, was because this concept is something that at least I'm not super familiar with or have seen done consistently. You might swap a role here and there, but never sort of like a complete cast swap. Was this a sort of idea that you came up with quickly, or did it take a lot of thought? Was there anything specific that prompted it?
So I won't lie. The idea came out of, in the original theater season for this year for CMU, we were going to do a gender bent Hamlet, where there were some large role switches, and that ended up being canceled because of COVID-19. But the idea kind of stuck in my head, and it's not even really my idea. I stole the idea from Central Michigan University, but with a different play, right? It just stuck out to me immediately when we decided that this was going to be about relevance. I just thought that was a really powerful take.
I mean, that makes sense. It clearly stuck with you, so it makes sense that you'd want to find another way to sort of play that out and experience it and share what it meant to you.
Mm-hmm.
I also think part of it stemmed from, if you look at our performance group, we're all very white. But like Avery and Sam were talking about how Rebecca is a really strong actress, and obviously she's African American, and so they talked about maybe getting her in to play Othello. So that stemmed to Othello being a female. So then we were like, well, what if we made the whole cast gender bent?
That's really interesting. Because typically when people think of Othello, the focus is usually on issues of race. And I thought it was really interesting trying to look at the sort of like intersectionality of it. Or have you guys had any conversations about that, the way that race and gender kind of combine in the play or in your version of it? Or was it just sort of like a natural thing?
I mean, we really haven't talked about it too much, but that mostly where sorry, my husband's out there. I'm in a truck. I'm sorry. No, but one of the things that we've talked about was mostly that when we looked at the stuff that we're pulling from the script, in order for us to, we were really conscious of, we want to point out that microaggression almost of racism that's really common nowadays. It's not all like as blunt as when it was in Shakespeare's time, but that doesn't mean it's not there anymore. And so when we were pulling it and when I was putting the dialogue together specifically, like Iago, her character is very manipulative and very sly, but has this kind of relationship with the audience. She confides in the audience in a very backhanded way that is more, I think, like the racism that's apparent today. Is it's very underhanded and very like under the rug, but it's still intentional in certain ways. So I think that we really brought that to the foreground as far as its relevance and what we see today.
And I think the really important part of what we're doing is that in having Othello played by a woman and Desdemona played by a man and you know all these other roles, it's not that Othello will be played feminine. Othello's still going to be Othello. It just a woman is Othello, and Desdemona isn't going to be isn't going to be a man. Desdemona is still going to be Desdemona. Just I think that those intentions and those characteristics are still present in anybody. It can be present in anybody. I think that's really at the heart of what we're trying to get to here.
I love that. I mean, sadly, that's not an attitude that's seen super often in mainstream, like really famous productions, but seeing even on a small scale these sort of attitudes of whoever playing whoever and people going for the roles that match them the best, not necessarily because of identity, but because of character or what they find most intriguing. Like, even if it's starting on a small level, it's really nice to see those ideas sort of shift and that desire and interest be there, I guess. Does
Yeah, I mean, I
anybody?
think we were really fortunate too that like all of the people who are in the performance group that are doing the performances were really fortunate that everybody is really good at reading Shakespeare and is really good performers. So I mean, we were definitely blessed in that area.
That's great. I just want to ask if anybody had any closing comments before we wrap up. All right. Thank you all for talking to me. It was great.
Thanks, Aaliyah.